One of the main things you cover is the police and crime. And I can't help but notice that after 20 years of some of the best crime statistics ever, we are plummeting into a new 1970s, 1980s version of high crime, especially the murder rates are shooting up. What are you seeing on the crime statistics, and why is it happening?
It's extraordinarily depressing, worrisome, and tragic. We're seeing thousands more overwhelmingly Black victims of homicide. Last year was the largest percentage increase in homicide since recorded history in this country. And why this is happening is the demonization of the police since at high volume since the death of George Floyd. That demonization has been going on for decades, but the difference after the George Floyd death was that you had every elite establishment in the country embracing this phony narrative about systemic lethal police bias. You had the president of the United States when he was running for election during 2020 and in his inaugural speech and every opportunity since then, repeating the lie that Black parents are right to fear that their children will be killed by a cop every time they step outside. And cops are incredibly demoralized. There's been an exit from the profession. People are taking early retirements. It's impossible to replace them. Who would want to start a job when the first day you start, you are under the pall of the accusation of racism that you can never clear your name of? And they've backed off of the essential proactive enforcement in high crime neighborhoods that is purely discretionary. They don't have to do it, but it means things like getting out of your car at 2 a.m. when you see somebody hanging out on a known drug corner, hitching up his waistband as if he has a gun and asking that guy a few questions. Cops are saying, why should I get out of my car? I don't have to. There's not been a 911 call yet. There's not been a shooting yet. I'm going to drive around, wait for the next robbery call to come over my radio, because if I get out and this questioning turns confrontational and I am forced to escalate my use of force, and that somebody's got a cell phone video, it goes viral, I'm out of a job, I could be facing criminal prosecution, and cops are just saying it's not worth the effort.
Is there any truth to the emotional charge, I would say, that even if the police aren't doing anything wrong, the fact that so many Black people commit crimes puts innocent Black people in this position where they're getting harassed? Is there any truth to that? Is that an actual serious problem that has to be dealt with, or is it just the state of play?
Well, I would accept your articulation of it. I think it's true. I think there is a Black crime tax. It is undoubtedly the case that a law-abiding Black male does stand a greater chance of at some point in his life getting stopped because he meets a suspect description. 1/3 of all Black males have a felony conviction, not because the system is racist, but because the crime rate is that high in the Black community. And so, if you're driving a car and you're obeying traffic laws, and we can talk later about what we know about actual speeding behavior between Blacks and whites, which is not what the public thinks, but there, if you're otherwise law-abiding, there is a higher chance that you'll get pulled over because somebody has committed a crime that you fit a description of, or on a street. So that is a burden, but I would say the far greater burden is the fact that Blacks die of homicide at 13 times the rate between the ages of 10 and 43 as whites between the ages of 10 and 43. 13 times the rate. They're being killed at 13 times the rate, not by the police, not by whites, but by other Blacks. The police are trying to lower that homicide toll. That data comes from 2015. It's the CDC's own data. It's gotten much worse since then. 2020 and 2021 has just seen open season on Blacks by other Blacks. We're likely to see 10,000 Blacks who were killed last year, and probably the number will be higher this year. That's more than all, much more, thousands more than all white and Hispanic homicide victims combined, even though Blacks are only 13% of the population.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, we saw crime go down because of scientific policing, because of broken windows kind of policing where you don't tolerate small crimes because they lead to big crimes. The left's argument was that there was mass incarceration. And Malcolm Gladwell makes this argument that taking so many black males off the street hurts the neighborhood and actually feeds into crime because you lose fathers, you lose, men from those neighborhoods. Is there any other way of doing this? Is there any truth to that? Is there any sense that was Donald Trump wrong when he passed the whatever it was called, the First Step Act, and let people out for lesser drug crimes? I mean, was there any reform needed?
Well, what Trump was really wrong about was doing this in the name of racial justice and buying into the left's narrative that the criminal justice system is racist. That was disastrous. That was opportunistic on his part. He wanted a way to bash Joe Biden. There are many other ways to bash Joe Biden. Joe Biden was right to sign the federal 1994 crime bill. That bill acknowledged that incarceration is, frankly, sadly, the only thing we know besides proactive policing that stops crime before it happens. But incarceration reliably incapacitates criminals. It would be great. Incarceration is not an end in itself. It would be great if we had programs that could reliably prevent crime or reform people once they have joined the gang lifestyle. The one program we have is something called a family. It's something called a father and a mother who are both committed to their biological child and are providing twice the emotional, financial, kin resources as a single mother who may be trying her best. But frankly, the odds, as Obama recognized in 2008 when he was running for president the first time around, the odds are incredibly against that single mother in her ability to raise a law-abiding child, and boy and girl. The mass incarceration meme, Drew, is a result of one thing: disparate impact. It's the fact that the criminal justice system does have a disparate impact on blacks. Blacks make up about a third of the nation's prisoners, even though they're 13% of the population. If that weren't the case, if whites were disproportionately in prison compared to their population numbers, nobody would be talking about mass incarceration. The attitude would be, put them in there and throw away the key. Everything in our criminal justice system today is driven by the fact of disparate impact. You cannot enforce the law without having a disparate impact on blacks. Why? Not because the system is racist, but because the black crime rate is so high. In Chicago, a black Chicagoan is 80 times more likely to commit a shooting than a white Chicagoan. In New York, a black New Yorker is 50 times more likely to commit a shooting than a white New Yorker. In Los Angeles, a black Los Angelino is 35 times more likely to commit homicide than a white Los Angelino. Those are the facts. And so the only way to avoid disparate impact of law enforcement on blacks is to stop enforcing the law at all. And that's what's going on. That is what's going on. That's why these progressive prosecutors are saying they're not going to enforce trespass. They're not going to enforce resisting arrest. They're not going to enforce loitering. They're not going to enforce theft. Why? Because those all have a disparate impact on blacks. And of course, what really has a disparate impact on blacks is unwinding police. Let me just, if I can, Drew, if I can just give you some reality here from Chicago to get viewers a sense of what's going on every day, because the media turns its eyes away. It's astounding to me. Over Labor Day weekend in Chicago, you had 66 people, at least 66 people shot. 11 children under the age of 17 were shot. A 4-year-old boy who was visiting from Alabama was having his hair braided in a house. He was killed by shots fired at the house he was in while he was in a barbershop chair having his hair braided. Over 4th of July weekend, you had a 1-month-old girl who was shot, now critically wounded, in a mass shooting, the media only likes mass shootings if white people are committing them. This was an instance where you had three males who got out of a black Jeep Cherokee and began shooting in several directions across a sidewalk. They hit 7 people. They got back in their Jeep Cherokee and fled. So the 1-year-old was shot in the head. Hours before, a 9-year-old girl had been shot in the head in the backseat of a car. And on the Thursday before the 4th of July weekend, you had a 6-year-old girl and her mother who were shot, critical condition. There was a drive-by on the sidewalk. A 5-year-old girl was shot 8 hours earlier. This is going on every single weekend and day, and the press doesn't cover it because it will not talk about Black pathology. It does not want to talk about Black-on-Black crime. If these were white kids getting shot, there would be a national revolution. The press thinks of itself as so anti-racist. It does not give a damn about these Black victims because they're all taken by Black criminals.